I'm a bit nervous, so I generally pretend to do a bit of an icebreaker session before we just start our talks. And I'm going to ask a very simple question to you guys. We had an amazing lunch thanks to the Harness and SREday folks. Just a simple talk. How many of you did have the chicken burritos? Awesome. And how many of you took the steak burritos? And finally, any vegetarians? Oof, a small crowd. Awesome. So it's a fun experiment, right? And the reason I asked this, I also took a chicken burrito, if you want to know. And my reason was simple because as a practicing Hindu from India, I cannot eat steak. And I don't prefer vegetarian. So my choices were thanks to the transparency and inclusivity that I wanted chicken as my main ingredient. And this icebreaker was relevant to my talk, Enterprise SBOM Initiative with Backstage, because SBOMs essentially are ingredients of software. In my talk today, I'm going to quickly breeze through 4 sessions, which is I'll talk about what is an SBOM. And this is going to be a use case or case study of what I have done for one of our partners, which is Broadcom. And as all non-functional stuff like compliance and security, this was not something that I was supposed to do in the last quarter, but it came on my head as a hammer, as a mandate. So I did it anyways. So I'll talk about the renewed focus on security. I'll talk about Backstage. I saw a few sessions today were talking about IDPs like Port, Radius. Backstage is another IDP by Spotify, and I'm an avid contributor to that open source project. So I'll talk about that. And finally, I'll talk about how I implemented SBOM for Broadcom. Before we move ahead, small introduction about myself. I work as platform architect at Status Neo. Status Neo is a consulting company backed by McKinsey. I gained my notoriety for becoming the GitHub Stars Award. I was the youngest GitHub star at the age of 21, and I've received this award for 3 times. And back in 2020, I was one of the most active GitHubers in India. And I also contribute avidly to Backstage. If anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's the QR code. And I'll share the slides after this talk as well. Awesome. So the main question that I get a lot while implementing SBOMs is what the actual hell is an SBOM, right? And the fun part is all the business that we work with are, as usual, driven towards cost, right? We want to generate the biggest of revenues. For us, shipping out features is more of a priority rather than doing compliance. And it's a huge education to the leaders, the C-suites, the decision makers that you have to implement this. So I treat them as 5-year-old kids and try to make the explanation as simple as I can, what an SBOM is. And for me, as I mentioned earlier, SBOM is nothing but an ingredient of software. So I wrote this book. I'm just joking. Okay, I'm skipping slides now. I wrote this book called Recipe for Transparency, Security, and Trust in Software, called an SBOM. And SBOMs are essentially every customer who is essentially why we build software should know what are they actually using in a product. And I'll talk about later as well. There is a US executive order which also got launched in 2021. And that's where this mandate came on to Broadcom. So it's now a hammer on the heads of us. Awesome. I'll skip this because we already talked about this. I go ahead. So I play a lot of games, and one of the games I used to play a lot is GeoGuessr. This is one of my images from my trip in July. Would someone like to guess where this is from? Any random guesses? It's not in the US. No. It's in England. So someone is closer. Any takers for a city? No, it's York. So it's Yorkshire building. Just wanted to do another icebreaker because I feel a lot of nervousness. Also, relevance. I'm talking a lot of garbage, right? So when I went to York for a client offsite with Caesars Entertainment, they told me that York is very famous for fish and chips. There's a huge bakery called Drake's that sell them. And I went to enjoy this delicacy with them. I ordered it. And then one of my close friends for in the client group told me that their traditional fish and chips are fried in beef. So I was like, oh, I can't eat this. So again, this was not mentioned anywhere on the menu. And it was again a choice that I found when I realized. So I said no to that delicacy. How is all of this relevant towards software? While we build software, we have a lot of package and libraries because we don't want to build everything from scratch, right? We want to have modularity and reusability. So we generally use a lot of open source libraries after threat modeling, taking notes from the last slides. We try to build a lot of proprietary libraries if you're working on an enterprise. And then obviously, we don't want to build payment gateways and stuff like that from scratch. So we use interfaces like Stripe, etc. So those are the main types of software ingredients that we use. And how I would like to talk about how three different POVs come into the picture when you build a software product, right? There is customer, and customer is king. There is the C-suites or the business decision makers, and then there is developers, right? And keeping our ego aside as proud developers or owners of a company, eventually everything is what customer does, right? Customer is king. We should be customer obsessed, because if they don't like our product, we are not building anything relevant as a developer. And if you're not getting adoption, we're not getting revenue generated. So transparency to the customers is very important. How many of you have seen this meme? Do you relate to this meme? Especially JavaScript developers or Node.js developers, right? As developers, one of the projects that I did back in India was for the biggest low flying carrier, which is Indigo. And we were under very strict deadlines, right? For us, building out features within few months was the priority. We did not care about quality of software we are building. We did not care about the security at all. And our development process was, hey, let's pick this library, this open source library. We don't care what version we are using. If it is working, it's fine. We move ahead. We roll. And slowly and steadily, our entire package manager got loaded. Our good friend, the C-suites guys, always love to prioritize dollars, right? So if you give them a choice between a red pill and a blue pill, you want a blue pill where you are building an MVP, shipping it out and generating revenue, versus a red pill where you're building the best software of all time, but it has no revenue at all. They will always take the blue pill, right? So that's what their priorities are. And the third POV towards the software. Oh, before I move to a third POV, you can see I did not practice these slides. So let's talk about C exec's business prosperity priorities, right? The priorities of Fortune 500 boards are all of these. One of the use cases I've seen literally grow up right now is all the CFOs and CEOs want to achieve economies of scale. One example I would give is, as a developer or leading software teams, we never care about the tool that we use, right? For us, it was like, this is the best tool. I think it's the cutting edge tool in the industry. I want to use this XYZ tool. But if I'm a CFO of a company, I don't want you guys to randomly choose a tool, get it procured and start using it. I want you to be using a standard tool. One example would be Broadcom, because I'm going to talk about Broadcom a lot. Broadcom is a company of acquisitions, right? Everyone knows Broadcom. They acquired CA, they acquired Symantec, they recently acquired VMware. And all of these group of companies have their own technology. So one example would be for version control. One company has Bitbucket, one company has GitLab, one company has GitHub. As a CFO, it's a nightmare, right? I want you to come onto a single platform. Whatever you choose, just cut down to the number of licenses. Another area where C-suites don't see eye to eye with the developers is customer trust. And customer trust is a nightmare for CFOs and CEOs. And you cannot play with security, right? There are incidents, and I'm not going to go into this. And sorry for the folks in the back. It's not readable, I know. So there has been a lot of big, huge incidents. Someone talked about the 2024 CrowdStrike incident that happened a few months back. There was a Log4j incident in 2021, and then 2020 SolarWinds incident. So all the CFOs and CEOs are having nightmares. Like, this incident should not happen to our company. And this is, again, somewhat funny bit that happens. If an actual incident happens, your company is going through memes. So we all know when Meta lost some PII data, our good friend Mr. Zuck became a robot meme, and he was dragged into the Senate and was questioned a lot. And Meta lost a lot of share value, right? They because of loss of customer trust, they lost a lot of money. And this on the left is the Indigo airline printing out manual boarding passes, because when the CrowdStrike incident happened, all the servers were down. They could not print the actual boarding passes. All right. So as we can conclude, there is a difference between the priorities of a leader and a priority of a developer. I love this book. If you have read it, it's an amazing read. I would really recommend it. And this book talks about how developers can align themselves with the leadership's priorities. And that will be not focus on building bot, not focus on building how. It should be focused on why we are building stuff and who our customers are. Finally, the third POV is customer satisfaction and customer circling, right? And I'm not saying this is coming from Agile Manifesto. It's the first and the most important principle that our highest priority as a software engineering or a product company should be early and continuous delivery to releasing a software. So there are different POVs attached to building a software product, but I am pretty sure that customer obsession and customer satisfaction take the highest priority. And basis all of these incidents that happened, the US government in 2021 launched an executive order 14028 around cybersecurity, which had a lot of big pinpoints, but the relevance towards this talk is the notion of SBOMs. There's another QR code if you want to read this executive order in detail from the official website, but I'm going to, if anyone is scanning, I'm going to give a second, otherwise I'm jumping. Next up, I'll talk about how I set up this enterprise SBOM initiative for Broadcom, right? And again, a lot of text. I'm not sure how readable it is, but I'll try to pace myself accordingly. While implementing the notion of SBOM for an enterprise, the biggest issue that came in was how do we get the actual product teams to implement this? Because it's a conflict in priority, right? All the product teams have huge, tremendous pressure to deliver features. And for them, this compliance, non-functional requirement was a lower priority. They already have their PIs planned. They already have their safe agile training done. They don't care about ad hoc SBOM implementation. The other bit was, how do we make dashboard transparent, right? It's not a technical challenge to generate SBOMs. One of our friends, Siri, showcased generating SBOM in few seconds. The big problem is how do we make it accessible to the C-suite and how do we make them accessible to the customers? The other issue, especially for companies like Broadcom, is how do you handle taxonomies? The way things are tagged for inorganic acquisitions is very difficult because you are carrying legacy, like 10, 20 years of namings, which are not standard, not consistent. How do you generate an enterprise SBOM initiative that will cater to all of those companies, internal companies? Then there was a tool integration choice. There are hundreds of tools that generate SBOMs. I'm not paid by anyone, so I'm not going to name them. But Broadcom had a license with Synopsys. They use Black Duck as a corporate tool of choice. So we stuck with them, right? They did not want to spend another ounce of money on doing evaluations. The next aspect was how do you generate an accurate SBOM, right? Because even if Synopsys, who are one of the leaders in security space, their SBOMs have a lot of false positives. Their SBOMs database are generally outdated. So even if, let's say, new vulnerability come into the picture, their update time is 7 days. Before 7 days, it's not an updated database. It's not a real-time database. Then customer education is important, right? Again, it's a mandate. The executive order is here. Broadcom has a federal license, so they will have to be one of the first companies to adopt SBOMs. But how do you encourage the product teams to adopt it? That's an important evangelism pattern to come into the picture. Enter Backstage. How many of you have heard about Backstage by Spotify? Awesome, 2 guys. I'll give you a quick run through of what Spotify and Backstage does. So Backstage is an open source and free to use IDP, internal developer platform. I'm taking notes from Michael and not saying it is a portal. It's adopted by a huge ton of companies. I've listed few big names. You can see Common William Hill are some companies that have implemented it in actual, and then there are other companies who have adopted this as well. And it's a very popular project, right? It has around 28,000 stars on GitHub, and it has a huge traction. They are also having a Backstage con in the KubeCon next week, so that's amazing. You should go and hear those talks as well. How am I relevant to the Backstage space? How many of you know this guy? This is a pretty famous guy, right? Okay, tough audience. So this is our good friend Kelsey Hightower, who has worked for 2.5 decades at Google and is one of the core contributors to Kubernetes space. Last year at Broadcom's internal conference, he gave a keynote on developer experience, and I followed suit with a Backstage discussion. And the company that I work for, Status Neo, is an Backstage commercial partner. And I have done around 150 plus open source contributions back to Backstage and written around 20 plus articles, #ad. All right. So I usually skip this slide, but given folks here have not heard about Backstage, I'll quickly run through this. So Backstage is an IDP. And for me, it does three things, right? It helps you build, manage, and explore software. One simple use case of creating new software in seconds would be, again, mostly what developer experience is about. It's not about technical challenge. Technical stuff is easier. The bigger issue is the human problem. The human wear challenges is more difficult to solve for. One of the challenge we see is it's easier to create Terraform modules. It's more difficult to restrict 10 different teams to build 10 different Terraform modules. We want them to build a single platform. The single platform engineering team should build a single platform engineering module, and all of them should self-serve this in few seconds rather than spending days, months, and weeks to build their own platform. How do we manage? How Backstage manages everything end-to-end supply chain tool? There are around 1,000 plus licenses at Broadcom. And in general, a company might have around 20, 30 tools in general. Backstage gives you a single pane of glass. It allows you to aggregate all the metadata into a single location. So you can contextualize this. You can send this information into Gen AI, which I don't want to talk about because everyone has. And the final bit is it helps you explore the entire software catalog system, right? This is mostly related to central knowledge base. How do you cut down onboarding time of new engineers, stuff like that. All right, enough about Backstage. Getting back on to SBOM. So this is very high level diagram of the SBOM generator that we built. We use Jenkins, which I really hate. It's ancient, but given customer preference, I had no option but to use that. Okay, I'll quickly run through the pipeline, right? So we chose two-step pipelines. The first step would be running on the customer interfaces. When I say customer, internal customers, the product teams. We start the pipeline, we initialize pipeline, and we fetch configurations. So fetch configurations will be essentially an API call back to Backstage, where we will find out taxonomy information like the business unit, the information around what is the product line, what is the product family, etc., etc. That's related to product. Then we will fetch configurations around SBOM. What is the SBOM tool of choice? Because Broadcom, although they wanted folks to use only Black Duck, but they have tools like AquaTrivy, they have SREday by JFrog. They wanted to make this CI/CD pipeline abstract. So you find out what tool you are using, what format of SBOM you want to generate. Is it going to be SPDX? If SPDX, what version? If it's going to be Cyclone DX, what version? Stuff like that. And once you fetch this configuration, then you ship this data as a request for source scan, binary scan, container scan, etc. to a messaging queue. The messaging queue was important because Black Duck, the license Broadcom had, was not at scale, right? It could not handle parallel request. And if, let's say, 20, 30 different teams start sending a parallel request, it will just essentially degrade the performance entirely. So we had a MQ in place. It can be any MQ, right? It can be Kafka, RabbitMQ, Mosquito. That's irrelevant. Then we ship this request to a central platform engineering pipeline where the steps include scan with the SCA tool of choice. For us, mostly it was a Black Duck. We generate the SBOM. And SBOM generation was actually a Boolean, right? We did not generate SBOM on all commits because that's essentially an overkill. You can send in a flag like generate SBOM for this specific tag, this specific version. Then you sign it with a digital entity so that it's validated that it's an actual SBOM signed by Broadcom. You push that SBOM to an artifactory. It can be JFrog, it can be S3. And that's the JFrog directory structure that we stuck with because of the standard taxonomy. It had business unit, it had product family, mid-family, sub-family, product name, and component. And then we have the real differentiator, what commits are, right? Because if you're building a source, if you're building a package, everything is associated to a commit SHA because all the branches, the master branch, the feature branches, the tags, releases are all universally associated to a commit SHA. So we wanted to build bombs on a SHA level. And that's where you will have different types of report like binary assets, etc. Awesome. Once the HLD is out of the place, I can show you some screen grabs from the actual plugin that we had for SBOM within the Backstage space. And the landing page, this is stitched to a specific repository, right? So you can see on top, it's a superhighway repository. It's a GitHub repository for them. There is a tab called SBOM, and you can see the list of SBOMs generated on different commit SHAs. You can click on a specific commit SHA, and then you will find out different reports attached to this SHA. Is it going to be a binary SBOM? Is it going to be a source SBOM? You can click on any one of them, and then you will find out a list of tabs where you can see relevant information. as they were married to Black Duck. The first one was a vulnerability list, similar to what CD was showcasing. We have a list of vulnerabilities attached to the list of severities they have. Again, the preference would be to solve for critical and hard severities, high severities. Other tabs include the SBOM quality score. For this, we use the open source, very popular open source utility called SBOM QS, or the quality score. And it tells you essentially what is the quality of SBOM you're generating. If it's anything under 80%, you are expected to essentially edit your SBOM and improve the quality. The next problem we solved was how you can showcase your SBOM in prettier format like JSON, YAML, or any other format you want. And then you can download this or connect it to a work at automation so that you can ship it across to the customers who have requested for the SBOM. And finally, we wanted to be abstract, not married to Black Duck. So we wanted to generate a tool agnostic report. For that, we chose an open source platform called Bomber by DevOps Kung Fu community. It's a popular project, and it essentially scans your generated SBOM. Whatever tool you use, it's not of any relevance, and then gives you the list of vulnerability reports. And the final piece which we are working towards right now is how we integrate this to a SCA tool of choice or a software composition analysis tool of choice, which can be a white source innovate bot, it can be a depender bot by GitHub, and it can be a SNCC. If, let's say, your tools have a lot of vulnerabilities because of outdated libraries, you can use these tools to automatically patch them with pull requests, right? With that said, that's all from my side. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm open for questions.